With San Francisco wrapping up their OTAs and headed into the next phase of the offseason, several players are already starting to stand out, and in this video, I want to go over players on the offense and defensive side of the ball that stood out week 2 of OTAs. Jumping into the offensive side of the ball, specifically the quarterback position, Brock Purdy continues to look like the quarterback San Francisco has grown to love over these last couple of years. He did throw an interception to Demetrius Flannigan-Fowles, but overall, he looks pretty consistent with his decision making and looks to have improved strength. On these interceptions, Brock Purdy or Joshua Dobbs will throw throughout this training camp. One thing that's important to realize is that these quarterbacks are often trying things they just won't in a game. Last year, for instance, Brock Purdy threw numerous interceptions on one day, but when asked why he has this approach to practice, it's because he's trying new things, trying to grow as a player, and I actually like to see that. I know the media wants perfection in practice, but we're talking about practice and an opportunity for Brock Purdy to continue to improve. Moving now to San Francisco's backup quarterback battle, Joshua Dobbs does look to be the better quarterback between him and Brandon Allen. On the day, for instance, he completed a deep pass to Kyle Juszczyk, as well as just looking extremely decisive, despite just learning the playbook. In addition to that, the quarterback that's more similar to Brock Purdy is Joshua Dobbs because he is a little bit more athletic. He can use his athleticism to get outside the pocket, but he also has a pretty nice arm. So going into this year, it does look like the quarterback depth chart will most likely be Purdy, Dobbs, and then Allen. So now let's move into the running back field, where Jordan Mason is clearly establishing himself as the best running back besides Christian McCaffrey on this team. In this practice, he caught 3 extremely difficult passes where Mitchell dropped a couple. So while everyone actually views Jordan Mason as a bruiser, the fact is he probably has the second best hands in the running back room and should be second on the depth chart behind only Christian McCaffrey. So going into this year, I'm really interested to see where Kyle Shanahan puts Mason on his depth chart. If he continues to be behind Mitchell, I'm really starting to question Kyle Shanahan's ability to evaluate talent on his roster. Or maybe his real issue isn't evaluation, but more so the fear of the unknown. For instance, during Brock Purdy's first year, he said that he believed he was the best quarterback, but he still started Trey Lance and then Jimmy Garoppolo before finally being forced to put Purdy in there. So going into this year, I definitely want to see Kyle Shanahan become more effective at managing his roster, and a big step would be putting Mason second on the depth chart. Moving off the running back room though, and now into the wide receiver room, there was a couple of rookies that really stood out. Starting out with their first round pick, Ricky Pearsall. He was extremely effective on the day. He caught a couple of passes over Isaac Yiadom, as well as being efficient in his individual drills. But he was wearing a blue non-contact jersey, so he might be slightly injured. But Pearsall being active in both team and individual drills indicate this injury is probably not that big of a deal. But Pearsall isn't the only rookie wide receiver San Francisco selected. They also picked up Jacob Cowing, and while he is undersized, so far he looks like a perfect fit for San Francisco's offense. When you look at the success Tank Dell had last year with Houston, I bet that Cowing could have a similar success with San Francisco. The biggest challenge will just be seeing how San Francisco will actually get him on the field. Initially, I do like the versatility both Pearsall and Cowing offer as return men, especially when you consider the NFL's new kickoff rules. But perhaps the biggest news in this group is San Francisco continues to have one of their most reliable weapons, re-signing Jauan Jennings. Moving off all these weapons though, we need to talk about San Francisco's offensive line play. And while it's hard to glean too much because they don't have pads on yet, one thing you can tell is how athletic San Francisco went in this draft. Whether you're looking in their 3rd round pick in Dominic Puni, Drake Nugent, or Jarrett Kingston, these guys can all move, and I think that just fits San Francisco's zone scheme extremely well. My biggest question will be though, how they hold up once pads come on against the likes of Nick Bosa or Hargrave for those interior guys. Ultimately though, I do think San Francisco did a nice job of adding more depth. They have basically the same starters they had going into last year, but now with more competition, and I bet Dominic Puni probably starts at some point for that right guard spot this year. Moving off the offensive side of the ball and jumping into the defense now, specifically the defensive line, while everyone's focusing on Bosa showing up or even the addition of Floyd, perhaps one of the biggest stories of this entire OTA period has been the development of Robert Beal Jr. He looks like he's added the necessary mass and strength to be an effective pass rusher, but he's also worked on his pass rush moves. In combination with that, he didn't lose his first step that he was known for during his college days. So heading into this year, while everyone's expecting Drake Jackson to do big things, I wouldn't be surprised if Robert Beal Jr. actually outperformed him. Moving off San Francisco's defensive line and into their linebackers, the best player here on the day was Demetrius Flannigan-Fowles. He was starting and he picked off that pass from Brock Purdy I mentioned earlier. He was in zone coverage, read Brock Purdy's eyes, and just did a great job of jumping the route to Jacob Cowling. So while San Francisco brought in Devondre Campbell, that doesn't necessarily mean he's guaranteed to start. Flannigan-Fowles is doing everything in his ability to start this year, and he just might. Moving off San Francisco's linebackers and into their secondary, specifically their cornerback position, San Francisco's rookie Renardo Green continues to look like an absolute steal in the second round. Green right now is currently playing that nickelback spot, so he is transitioning from the outside to the inside, but despite this, he's doing a pretty good job. For instance, he broke up a pass to Ronnie Bell, but he also just does a great job in press man coverage despite who he's facing. In a similar way I've been impressed by Renardo Green, I've also been impressed by San Francisco's second-year player Darrell Luter Jr. In a similar way to Green, he also plays with that aggressive press man style. But maybe the best aspect of his game is how he plays with the ball in the air. On the day, for instance, he was able to pick off Brandon Allen when he was trying to target Tariq Owens deep because he's able to identify where the ball is and then track it down. Staying in San Francisco's secondary, but moving over to the safety position, the biggest player that stands out here has to be the rookie Malik Mustafa. San Francisco selected him in the 4th round, but honestly, he looks like he could feasibly start this year if he had to. And I know going into this year, hopefully it's just going to be Hufanga and Brown starting, but let's say Hufanga does have a setback, I don't think this means that San Francisco now necessarily needs to bring back a guy like Tashaun Gibson. Overall though, these are just some players that really stood out on the second week of OTAs for San Francisco, and headed into this year, I actually see them improving in several positions. Perhaps most notably is their cornerback position, where Renardo Green looks like he's a big improvement over the likes of Ambry Thomas. But ultimately, these are just some of my thoughts, and I'd like to hear some of your thoughts down below, such as who's your favorite player, or if you think San Francisco is actually going to improve headed into this year. Will they make another Super Bowl push? Just basically what you're looking forward to heading into the season. It would also mean a ton to me if you liked and subscribed, and as always, I hope you guys have a great rest of your day.